Welcome to the Simon Jordan Radio Show, sharing knowledge, motivation, and inspiration for today's business world.
Hi, this is Simon Jordan, and welcome back to another edition of the Simon Jordan Radio Show. Well, also we've got info-packed radio shows, and today we've got a guest, and guess what? I didn't meet the guy on Twitter. No, it's not someone I met off social media. This is actually someone I met from my agent, and fascinating guy. I think he's got some great information coming up here, which I'm sure you'll agree. Let me introduce you to the guy's called Michael Dossi, and he's has an amazing healthcare system, and he's helped thousands of people return to health, including Lord of the Dance Michael Flatley. Now, having just opened his first clinic in London, he is training others in his techniques and empowering his patients to take control of their health. Now, I've worked a lot with health practitioners, helping them market and grow their business, and I've worked with people like Reiki practitioners, massage therapists, all this kind of stuff. So what Michael is doing, he's working with people's energy, and he is a bioenergy expert. And you're probably thinking, what the heck is this? Is this some kind of new age thing? But Michael is going to explain that. So Michael, welcome to the show.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
Excellent.
Thank you indeed, Simon.
So tell me, what is it all about?
Okay, well, yeah, I mean, sometimes it's very difficult to find a vocabulary to explain, but yeah, what we explain is that the body is made up of energy. Energy flows through us to keep us alive. If that energy becomes imbalanced, then the body becomes ill. It's very simple. Yeah. And I think in general now it's acceptable in society that the human being is made up of much more than just biochemicals, and the idea that when somebody becomes ill, that it's down to just the chemical imbalance and that's it. So what we do in our clinics is that, number one, yes, we work with the energy system of the body. Mm-hmm. Two, we look at all aspects of the body-mind systems in relation to diet, looking at the muscular structure, the skeletal structure, the emotional, mental state of the patient. So depending on what the patient presents with within our clinic, we look first to get the energy flowing and then to create a program which would be determined by whatever the patient is suffering from, create a program that will give them an element of control over their situation and ultimately getting them responsible for their own health, as you rightly say, because that's the real key to this. Yeah. Because the idea, Simon, that the idea that our health, our happiness, or whatever you want to call it, it comes to us packaged in a certain way, whether it be in a bottle or a capsule or a syringe. But that idea, that notion, that illusion is what we have to waken up out of. If we want to be healthy, we've got to become educated. Society needs to be educated to understand what it takes to be healthy, the belief in themselves, the commitment they need to make to it, and also the sacrifice they need to make. Because if you're ill, we can exist in the illusion all we like that someone's going to wave a magic wand and solve it. Bottom line, it's down to you.
Yeah, it is about taking action. I interviewed Marie Diamond from The Secret recently, and funny enough, I posted some questions on. I put it on Facebook and I said, give me some questions to ask. And one guy said, yeah, if The Secret's so good, where's my Maserati? And I basically said, you've got to take action. You cannot just sit there. And I think we live in a society at the moment where we expect everyone to do the help for us. We're going to sit there. Yeah, no, someone else is going to make me better. Someone else is going to educate my kids and do the discipline. Parents aren't taking control, and it's down to health as well. I mean, so many people are just... That's
the biggest thing, and that's a very relevant question that was posed and that was posted on the social media network, is that here is what I genuinely believe from my 24 years of experience. I started this in 1988. I studied in Yugoslavia. I brought it back to Ireland with my friend Tom Griffin, and we created one of the biggest responses ever to a health issue on TV when we showed it. Working with the energy system and with this specific way could enable you to achieve lots of things, from a lot of stress release to people with different illnesses, fully recovering. And herein lies the big problem in society, Simon. We are all existing in this illusion that happiness is attainable, that the perfect human being is attainable. It's not. Let's waken up out of that illusion. Because let me explain why. For the lady who likes her handbags, for example, she buys some maybe Gucci handbag or Chloe handbag or whatever, and she's happy with that today. But what happens is 6 months' time, a new one comes out. Yeah. You know, we all bought the iPad 1. Well, we were happy with that.
I didn't actually, just to add that in.
He probably got it for nothing. He didn't buy it, you're right. But the thing is, what I'm saying is iPad 1, iPad 2, the point I'm making is, it's always, when we feel we're happy, we have something else to go after. So it's to realise that, you know, our health is attainable, provided we are willing to work with it on a daily basis. Yeah. And the thing is that happiness is something that you can't quantify. It's something that we've got to learn to be content with on a daily basis.
Do you teach then gratitude? Because this is something I've come across a lot. I interviewed a guy, it was about mindfulness, and it's something, you know, you're right, we wait for the next thing, because you think, when I get there, I'll be happy. When I have this, I'll be happy.
Which you won't.
It's a crock, isn't it? Yeah. So you think, what about now? Having gratitude, waking up in the morning and go, wow, I didn't die in my sleep, but I'm healthy, I'm happy, I've got friends, I've got people who love me. Do you teach that as well?
Look, what I'm faced with in my clinic every day are of parents who have children with ADD, ADHD, autistic spectrum. When they're waking up in the morning, they're thinking, how am I going to get through the day with this child? Or if I treat someone who has cancer, when they're waking up in the morning, they're thinking, well, my future doesn't exist, or things like that. And when you're faced with that on a daily basis, I find sometimes it's difficult for people to kind of clear the dust and to be thankful for the small things. But what I do say to people is, you know, when you do waken up in the morning, throw the legs out on the floor if you can and say, okay, right, I can think. Let's try to change my thinking in a more positive way. I can eat, or I eat. Let's try to eat in a more positive way. I can do a little bit of walking. Let's try to walk and do a little bit of exercise. Yeah. And it's to make it simpler for people. Like we can talk, use a nice blasé kind of language and say to people, you can have the magic car and the magic. But I deal with people who are billionaires, not millionaires, billionaires. They have all the cars, they have all the trappings of life. Are they happy and healthy? No. So the thing is that for each of us is to be content where we are now, to identify, what are the positive things in our lives. Yes, to accept that. But then what we need to begin to do is to begin to approach life in a different way, to realize that we can actually determine our future, that we can determine the journey. What happens is in life in general, and I find this with people who are ill in my own work, in my own clinic, what happens is that somebody's diagnosed with a particular condition, Simon. What happens is that they're sitting, it's like you have your car, they're sitting in the passenger seat of the car. The consultant is on the driving seat. He's deciding the gears to put it in. He's deciding the gear to put the car in. He's deciding the journey and the destination. And like society's along for the ride. That's what has to change.
Totally get that.
Society has to change that perspective of themselves.
Do you think though, with certainly the older age range? I know my dad was given 2 years to live, and I think he probably died to the day. But I know the younger generation. I know certainly my friends and family. We look at doctors in a different way. My partner works for the NHS. She runs the MRI side. But in the older generation, they go along and the doctors are gods. If they say you need to do this, they'll do it. But the doctors don't know all the answers.
Look, I work with medical people. I work with part of the team of people that I work with in my clinic are vascular surgeons, medical doctors. Some I've trained in the UK, nutritionists, counselors, psychotherapists. Because I believe that what we need is an integrated approach. Medicine has a role to offer in our society, but it doesn't have all the answers. And I think what we have is a sick care system in our society, not a healthcare system. And what we need to do is to educate society to understand how the body functions from an energetic perspective, educate them to understand about that, because the increasing statistics that we see with regard to cancers, with regard to the neuromuscular disorders like motor neurons, with regard to like depression, the increased prescriptions of antidepressants and sleeping pills. Now you've got to think of this: 90% of people who are turning up in doctor surgeries today, 90% are turning up there as a result of stress. So that's where our illnesses begin. So if, for example, if we are stressed on a daily basis, okay, and we're in a stressful environment, whether it be work, and right now you look at the present economic climate. The present economic climate is not positive. So you have people out there right now who are thinking, will I have a job in 6 months? Will I have a marriage in 6 months? Will I be able to support my family? Will I have a house in 6 months' time? And they're the basics that our society are suffering with at the moment. They're the illnesses, they're the cancers in our society. And when you're caught up in that consciousness of fear, Simon, what happens is that fear is the basis for all illness, because that creates a huge amount of anxiety, panic and stress. And when you have that anxiety, panic and stress, what's going to happen biochemically, for example, a little pathway is that you're going to deplete yourself of zinc and B6. Now when you take your tryptophan foods like your proteins, you're not going to convert them to serotonin, which 85% of our serotonin is produced in our gut. Not many people realize that. And the rest is produced in the brain. And if you're depleted of that zinc and B6, and if you're not able to convert your foods into those neurohormones and the peptides that we need, then what happens is now we have to synthetically stimulate antidepressants and sleeping pills. And that creates a cascade of negative events that eventually manifest irritable bowel syndrome, headaches, tiredness, dizziness, fatigue, all of that can be rectified.
What would you? I mean, I say to people, I was talking about it recently on another radio show. I was saying, garbage in, garbage out. Stop watching the news. Stop reading the newspapers. I mean, I get a magazine called The Week, and it comes on a Friday, and it's a roundup of all the news, but it doesn't talk about the rapes and the horrible gratuitous stuff which the newspapers love. I think I don't need to know that. And ever since I've done that, it has put me in a more positive mind. I don't listen to the radio in the morning, a bit of music perhaps, but I don't wake up and think, someone's been gang raped, or this has happened, or someone's been murdered. I don't need to know that. Why do I need to know? It doesn't really, and it does. It affects me. Having now had children, it mentally affects me. So that doesn't start my day off properly. What would you say then? Someone who maybe can't come and see you, or what are the hints and tips would you give? People are feeling a bit low. They are suffering from the economy. What can they do now to make it better?
I think there's a lot they can do, and I did a little pilot study in Ireland recently where I took 40 people. I was on talking on a radio program about how suicide is becoming an option for our society to confront their problems, and I think that's a very sad thing when that happens, Simon. And I remember we were talking. I went on to talk for about 15 minutes on this, and it was an hour later when I came off the program. And what I decided at the end of that program, I would take 40 people for 2 hours each week for 4 weeks, and to teach them basic skills of how to deal with their emotions. And we had about 700 people who wanted to do it. 40 we took anyway, and it's well documented. Some of it's on our site as well. And the thing was that all of those people benefited from the point of view that they were able to cope with their stress on a daily basis. And I would say, one, get out amongst nature. Take your kids, get out, switch the television off, get out amongst nature, go for walks and
stop watching EastEnders.
Well, I'll tell you what, I would never watch that stuff, because every time I look at them, there's somebody crying. There's always a negative emotion attached to it. And the thing is, we resonate with that. So you're right. What we need to do is disconnect from this negative garbage that's going on. And I think getting out in nature is very, very important. Number two, diet. Look, eat the food that's fresh and wholesome. When we're stressed, we have a tendency to stimulate. And one of the biggest killers in our society is sugar. Sugar will exacerbate any inflammation problem. It will feed every disease known to man. It feeds cancers. It feeds everything. It's worse than smoking. It's worse than smoking because it feeds every disease. It causes so much problems. And when you look at the statistics about the increase in diseases, we have to relate it to something. Our food is food is the biggest challenge in our society at the moment, because the food that we're eating is just not food. We live in a convenient world where we want convenient food. We're not hunters and gatherers like we used to be in the past. And if we can get out amongst nature, do a little bit of exercise, walk, communicate. One of the biggest problems today, and I found with part of this group, was the inability of families to communicate. When there is stress and problems, there's a tendency to shut it down. I won't let my wife know, or whatever, or I won't let my husband know this, or whatever. And suddenly, that buries itself. Talking, communicating about issues, getting out walking amongst nature, getting diet right, basic little things like that help us to cope with the stress. And it's those simple little things have been proven scientifically to bring about changes within the biochemistry of our body that can be far-reaching and far better than any drug that you can take into your system. Just those basic things. I mean, even just at night time, for example, when you lie down in bed, just to visualize. Okay, just visualize you have this river of energy. Just imagine you're lying there and there's this river of energy flowing through your body, and it's internally showering, like you have a shower in the morning, internally showering out your organs, your lungs, your heart, liver, stomach, pancreas, spleen, kidneys, washing out the internal organs as if you're washing the stress out of your body. And just going to sleep with that awareness of you're de-stressed, helps you to have a better night's sleep, helps you to regenerate better, your digestive system to function better, lowers your blood pressure, relaxes your muscles. There's so much benefit to just doing those simple basic things, Simon.
It is mindset. I put a message out yesterday, and a lot of people retweeted it. That's a Twitter term for people who aren't on Twitter. But I said success is all about mindset. So sort your head out. And it's so true. And I do an exercise in what I do when I'm doing a bit of coaching with my clients. And I'll talk about, listen, if you're going to be successful, if you want to make your business, you've got to start with your mindset as well and your limiting beliefs. And I say, your communication, the quality of your communication is also the quality of the life. And I talk about, we do this scenario where I imagine that they're biting a lemon and they get suddenly that, whoa. And I think, well, it's only words. I've only just told you that you're imagining you're biting a lemon. Well, if I can get you to do that, what can you do for say to yourself?
Well, Simon, let's look at the science of that, because the science of this is very well established. Bruce Lipton, who's a medical professor, calls it the biology of belief. And the thing is that, and he says right now that genetics don't determine our future. As a medical professor standing on top of the class training medical doctors, he's saying, hold on a second, we've got it wrong. Genetics do not determine our future. So we can influence. Now, when you talk about the mindset is if what we perceive, what we think, what we feel, what we hope or lack of it, that makes up an information. That information is transmitted through the energy system, which is the pathway that transmits that. That then stimulates the membrane, which is the skin of the cell, and influences how the genes express themselves. Now, when we understand that as being a science fact, yes, that is what we do need to shift. We do need to say to people, listen, right now, when you think negatively, when you feel negatively, you're producing a biochemistry that's going to weaken your body and make yourself ill. Professor Irvin Kersh says, we can alter our experience by what it is we believe about it. You can alter your experience by what it is you believe about your situation now. Do you believe right now that your situation can't be changed? Is it because somebody told you that, or you actually believe that yourself? If it's because somebody told you that, then stop that immediately. Right now, start to believe that you can actually change. Like what you said, that you can now start to image, because everything will start with an image. Can you see yourself healthy? If somebody comes to me and they're diagnosed with multiple sclerosis, they can see themselves 10, 15 years down the road in a wheelchair. So I say, well, okay, pull back from that 15 years. Start now and see yourself in 15 years' time perfectly healthy. Is that achievable? Absolutely. All of the evidence is there. Professor Valerie Hunt in UCLA in her book Infinite Mind was able to prove conclusively that reality. So the science, the science and the evidence around this is very much established. And the problem is it hasn't found its way in general terms into the mainstream public domain. And that's the big problem. And it's great to be doing shows that is to give people this knowledge. So it is available. We can take control. We can be in charge. We can determine the future. So people listening to this can decide. They can decide right now. They can take responsibility of their lives. They can get off their butt. They can make it happen. 3 things. Belief in yourself, again. Commit yourself to the program. Waking up out of the illusion it's going to happen overnight, and make the sacrifices, whether it's sacrificing stuff in your diet, whether it's sacrificing negative thinking and worrying and panicking, whether it's sacrificing people that you're meeting who are negative. Like if people at home were to put their name in the center of the page right now and draw an arrow out to everything that's going on in their lives and just cut the negative things, cut what's draining energy, and I don't care whether it's people, your friends, your neighbour, if they're draining your energy, cut them. If they're in your phone, delete them. If they're not... Totally
agree. I mean, you want to know what a company you keep, and there's a lot of people, the naysayers, who do bring you down.
Absolutely.
Yeah, move them away. But I certainly say to people, if you want to progress in your business, your life, hang around with people who are doing what you want to be doing, so you learn from them, and they bring you up rather than put you down.
Well, that's it, because most of the time people are in a pit, People say, I often say to people when I'm doing lectures, Simon, is that I want you to imagine right now that you're like a goldfish swimming around in a fishbowl. To the goldfish, that fishbowl is the limit of his reality. He doesn't understand that there is a vast ocean of infinite possibilities. Yeah. Not alone that, but if he was to be shown it, how could he handle it? We haven't been given the tools and the techniques and the language to understand what it takes to come out of that limited perspective of ourselves and to embrace this vastness of infinite possibilities that exist within us all. And it is through doing simple things not by sitting down, spending hours and hours and hours meditation. It is by doing simple things, recognizing the beauty in everything, just opening our eyes and awakening up to the reality of what life is. I often say to people that it's like this, that can you imagine, if you listen to this program, can you imagine, 20, 30, 40, 50 years ago, you were given this beautiful gift in a box, and you've left it under the Christmas tree for the last 30 or 40, 50 years.
Yeah.
And the gift I'm talking about is the gift of life. Society has yet to unwrap the gift we call life.
Yeah.
We're more worried about death, we're more concerned about death, we're more concerned about suffering, that we have forgotten to understand what it's like to live. And that's what we need to embrace. We need to unwrap this God-given, innate ability we have to live, to survive, and we will always survive. And if people could just take time to think about that, to unwrap that gift of life, and to open up to the potential and the possibilities they have. And if they're given the tools and the techniques, that things can change. And if they want the big car and the big house, fine. That's fine. But the important thing is not relevant. Those material things are not relevant for life.
Yeah.
What's relevant for life is to have a certain element of contentment and peace and calmness.
So once you change your mindset, you become more positive, would you say you then attract more?
Correct.
Yeah.
I mean, I was raised in a family of 10 in Ireland, 50 years ago.
A good Catholic family.
Good Catholic family, yeah, exactly. No television in our house,
Yeah.
But the thing is, and that's it, and I saw my father and mother rearing 10 of us, with nothing. And I always said to myself, well, if they can do that, what can I do? So it's
10 kids. I want to 5, but 10.
Yeah, double that. The pressure.
I hate to see you getting ready in the morning.
Yeah. but that's the thing about it. We just need to look at the simple things in life. And I think family values are very important.
Yeah,
I'm training families now. I'm training parents to work with their kids in weekend programs and things to help them to bring this into family medicine, this need to work with energy, transform emotions, this need to look at diet in a very simple way, make people responsible. Because I'll tell you why, if people don't take responsibility, we just become a statistic. We just slot into the queue of suffering. And that does not need to happen.
Do you come up against a lot of doctors and, again, the naysayers? Because certainly with health, I think certainly the medical industry, they need people to be unhealthy because they don't make profits. And, the drugs they give you can lead to side effects, so they give you more drugs, and it's endless, isn't it? I mean, do you get up at...
Look, I'm very fortunate. As I said, I work with medical people, and I genuinely believe that drugs have a role to play in our society. Unfortunately, I was talking recently with a vascular surgeon, and we were talking about statin medication, for example, cholesterol medication. And some years ago, I wrote about statin medication purported to have certain side effects, from memory loss to type 2 diabetes to aches and pains, raised liver enzymes, cataracts, and all that, and whatever. And I wrote about it, and I got ridiculed about it 3 years ago. Now, the FDA have come out and said, hold on a second, this is a problem. And now they've put it on as warnings. So, look, drugs have a role, but as one cardiovascular specialist said, look, nothing wrong with prescribing medication to deal with symptoms, provided at a parallel level you are dealing with what's causing the problem.
Yeah, good point.
And that's the way I see the future, Simon. I genuinely believe there is a need to integrate. You take an antidepressant. From a clinical perspective, it was proven that clinically, there is no clinical proof as such that antidepressants, because how do you chemically analyze an emotion? And what we have to try and do is get people to understand it in a very simple way, that while it can benefit people in the short term, long term doesn't work. So what we need to try and do is give the people that skill. But when you're brought up in a society where you're conditioned to believe that the doctor sorts your health out, that your religious belief or denomination sorts your journey to the next dimension out, the sad reality that people waking up is when you find yourself in the queue, you're on your own. And that's what I deal with. So what I genuinely believe is that I think right now there's a whole new consciousness emerging in our society. There's a whole new awareness. Society becoming far more questioning, far more intuitive, and inquisitive, and they're asking more questions, and they're no longer willing to say, well, the doctor has the answer for everything. I think most medical practitioners who I work with as well, say that, we don't have all the answers. So I think the real challenge now for society to take on the responsibility.
Yeah.
That a doctor can only do what we can do, and that's prescribe medication. We can get the energy flowing, put the diet in place, but people ultimately have got to go back into their environment and make the changes that are needed to enable them to become self-sufficient, to experience a much better quality of life. But it can be done. Absolutely, I've been doing it for the last 24 years. So like, rather than making excuses or kind of being critical towards the institutions, I think they have an offer. And yes, multinational drug companies are only interested in profit. How many healthy people does a doctor see in a day? No.
Yeah, exactly.
So like, if you're not seeing healthy people, how do you know what a healthy person looks like? So that's our job. In our clinic, we don't have the luxury or the medium of medication. What we have is an experience of, exhausting other avenues. And the great thing about this, and that's why I feel there's a huge need to embrace this understanding of the placebo. That in all drug trials, it has to be proven that the drug is better than the placebo. That means that it has to be more powerful than your mind.
Yeah.
In every case, it's never proven. So we're throwing out vital evidence that's been established every day. According to Robert Buckman, who is an oncologist, says that the placebo trials show us that it benefits anything from 35 to 60% of people. That's a very powerful a perception of what we can achieve when, as you said earlier, Simon, we can use our mind. So that's what we need to teach our people to use our minds to activate that pathway that is proven scientifically to work in 60% of cases.
Well, wasn't there, there's a tribe, I can't remember, in Africa, it was a while since I heard the story, or in Australia, and they have the witch doctor, and they have the pointing stick, and they'll go out, and the guy will literally come out and say, point the stick and say, you're going to die.
Yeah.
Nothing wrong with the guy, but because of such belief, literally within 2 days the guy's dead.
Absolutely.
Amazing.
Absolutely.
So how did you start this? I mean, who were you before?
Well, yeah, well, I mean,
What happened?
when I worked in the Department of Justice and the Department of Defence. I left school at 15, funny enough.
Oh, right.
And I went working in the Department of Justice. Fortunate enough, I went into the Air Corps after that because that's where I wanted to go. I had my life fixed on that. And then I went from there to the Department of Justice, working in the prison section. And I was involved in martial arts. And through my involvement in martial arts, I became aware of energy work that was going on in Yugoslavia, and I was really only interested from the point of view of training. And when I went to Yugoslavia, I had seen a guy by the name of Zdenko Domancic who was working in this area, and he had developed this way of working with the energy system. And we went there, and he gave us a copy of his book, and he told us translate it and work with it, and we learned basic skills and techniques and that, and we came back to Ireland and really just trying it out, and had no interest in career in this.
Yeah.
And suddenly, things just started happening, and suddenly we're thrust into the situation, and we were able to work with it and deal with it, and people were getting better, but yet we had no theoretical appreciation as to what was going on. So it took us nearly 20 years to find out exactly, that the whole theoretical. So people accepted that what we were doing was good, and that's where it all started. And now it's literally nearly all we train people in Poland, in the States, here in the UK.
And you helped Michael Flatley.
Yeah.
So how did that come about?
Yeah, well, we've worked a lot with a lot of high-profile people. Of course, Michael, everybody knows he had 200 medical tests, 50 of the best doctors. They couldn't find out what was wrong with him. And all that was wrong with Michael was burnt out. But there's no chemical solution to a burnout problem, which is really adrenal fatigue. It's adrenal function problems. So I understood what he was going through. So what we did was Michael contacted us through another client, a high-profile client that we've been seeing, and contacted me, and I saw him, and I laid it on the line what the problem was, put the program into place, and from the very first week he began to recover. Once we began to move the energy and re-establish the flow of energy for Michael, from that point he started to feel the change taking place. It released the stress. He felt the power coming back into his body. Then we put the program into place around diet, massage, and he took it on board, and of course was very open to this because he was a very creative person, having created Lord of the Dance and Feet of Flames and Celtic Tiger, and of course everybody remembers River Dance that he created as well. So the thing is, having had the creativity to create that type of those types of very successful shows, it was simple for him to visualize, to be creative. And we engaged him in that process. He still uses that today, 4 years later. He engaged that process, and as a result, he came back to full health. And indeed, we're very thankful that he did. We're very thankful because he he went worldwide on it, and told the people, which raised our profile hugely.
Fantastic. And he's a great guy to have singing your praises. I mean, we're in your practice in Weymouth Street in central London, and you've got a patient you've just finished working on. We're going to bring her in just to ask her a few questions.
Yeah, Lisa's here for today, and Lisa is a lady who had a condition she talked to you about. She came to us last May, and we worked with her. She had 4 years of problems, and as a result of the work that we've done, she's just one of a number of patients that we've seen who have recovered. She'll tell you her story. It's interesting, and the thing about it is this: it's not about Michael Doherty being a god, a guru, a master. It's about my work is to get the energy flowing, Simon, but to teach you about
you're empowering people to do it.
But to give you the skills to do it.
Yeah.
It's like that tweet that person asked, well, how do I do it? It's about giving you the actual practical skills, and it's only the simple basic things that make the difference. And that's what made a difference in this lady's life. But ultimately, getting the energy flowing was the catalyst to her recovery.
Brilliant. Love it. Well, let's get her in. Now we have Lisa in the practice. Lisa, so introduce yourself, because you've been working, or Michael's been working with you. Tell me about your story and introduce yourself.
Okay, so my name's Lisa Wallace. I came to see Michael last May because I had been diagnosed with psoriatic arthritis and fibromyalgia. That started over 6 years ago when I was 30. And basically I started off with a pain in my heel when I was on holiday, and I was kind of hunched over and I was putting it down to different beds and different pillows and things. And by the end of the holiday, I was limping quite badly, and I came home and I was diagnosed with tendinitis in my heel. Within 4 weeks from that, I had completely seized up my whole body. And my husband had to get the paramedics one morning to get me out of bed. They gave me gas and air to get me out of bed. And I was sent off to the hospital, and they examined me and sent me home with more medication, and couldn't really tell me what was wrong. Then my jaw started playing up, and I couldn't open my mouth wide enough to get food in at one stage. So over a couple of weeks I was going from my doctor to my dentist, and back to my doctor again, and then back to the dentist at the hospital, and back to my doctor again. And my dentist gave me more medication for wisdom teeth, but he said even though I didn't have any signs of wisdom teeth problems. And
what's that got to do with your leg, though?
It was just another kind of symptom that came on.
Yeah.
So my heel thing was still going on, and then my jaw started playing up. And when my own dentist and the dentist at the hospital couldn't find out what was wrong with me, then my GP said that he thought I should go and see a good rheumatologist. When I saw my GP at one stage, he thought I'd been in a car crash because I was so, I used to walk holding onto the wall because I couldn't stand up straight or walk properly. Anyway, I saw a rheumatologist who initially diagnosed rheumatoid arthritis, and they treated me on methotrexate for 2 years with that, but that had no effect on me at all and didn't improve my condition.
So you're still moving around, just in pain and...
Absolutely. I was in pain from my toes to my jaw.
Wow.
All my joints, all my muscles and tissues in between. And after 2 years, they decided that the treatment wasn't working, and they said that they thought that they questioned their own diagnosis of rheumatoid arthritis. They said it's possibly fibromyalgia. They told me that there was no cure, there was no treatment for it. Some people found acupuncture helpful, and basically showed me the door that day in the hospital. I was left on my own, and I lasted about 2 weeks after that. And then I went to, because I couldn't cope with the pain, and also the chronic fatigue. Sometimes the chronic fatigue was worse than the pain, because I spent days lying on my settee when my brain would be working, but I couldn't move. I couldn't move my arms or my legs. So after that, I went to the Hale Clinic, and I saw a guy called Dirk Budker who put me on a raw food diet, which I did that for 2 years. And I have to say, credit to him, I did feel a lot better when I was doing the raw food diet. The difficulty was that I found it really difficult to sustain that, particularly during the winter, because when it's cold and raining, you just want to eat
We like
food.
our casseroles with dumplings in.
So, and it was often during the winter that I was at my worst as well.
Yeah.
I used to have bad flare-ups, and a flare-up could be anything from 2 days to 2 weeks, and there was no gauge in it. So anyway, then we moved house, and I got a new GP and a new hospital, so I went back again, and the rheumatologist then diagnosed me with psoriatic arthritis because I've got psoriasis on my skin, and I went through loads of medication with them as well, sulfasalazine, and the last medication I was on with them were Humira injections that I had to inject myself.
So how far down? This is like 5 years?
Over 6 years.
Wow.
Over 6 years. The sulfasalazine, they had to take me off because of the side effects I experienced. The same with the Humira injection. So I felt horrendous when I was on the Humira injections. And I had, in the end, the hospital had to take me off that because of the side effects. And all they could do at that stage was refer me to the pain clinic to teach me how to cope with the pain. In the meantime, I contacted Michael Doherty, and I came to see him at the end of May 2011. I had a really bad flare-up in the February of 2011, and they gave me a steroid injection, which didn't work, and then they diagnosed me with psoriatic arthritis and fibromyalgia, and they said that the fibromyalgia was the most active. So I came to see Michael at the end of May 2011.
And how did you find out about Michael?
Actually, my sister-in-law in Ireland, her mother had sent me some details about Michael Doherty, but at the time I had just started a new drug at the hospital, so I put him in my in tray. And then my mum was watching the Alan Titchmarsh show, and she saw Michael Flatley on it talking about his recovery, about the man who treated him. So she told me about it. And
so Lisa, you've got to get down there
now. Absolutely.
Yeah.
So I googled him and realised it was the man that was sitting in my in tray for 6 months.
Oh no.
So I came to see Michael Doherty then the end of May, and the first day I came, I struggled to get up the stairs, and on the 4th day of treatment that week, I could have danced home.
Wow.
It was
That's amazing, isn't it?
Incredible.
So he was just working with your energy, but did he go through diets and the whole kit and caboodle?
He told me, when I first came, he told me that I had a mechanical problem in my neck. He told me that I had a problem with my digestive system, and that stress was at the root of everything. So he taught me a breathing and visualization technique, which I've got to do for an hour each day. He gave me a diet. Well, he gave me a list of foods to avoid, I should say.
Yeah.
Which I've been doing. He told me which supplements to take, which I've been doing, and he also told me to have regular massage for stress relief, which I've been doing as well. And by doing all of those things, I feel absolutely fantastic.
You look brilliant. You look like a picture of health. It's amazing.
Well, to be honest, I feel better now than I did before I got sick, over 6 years ago. Well, almost 7 years ago now.
Do you feel angry, into the fact that it's taken this length of time? Do you feel, that all the other people out there who are suffering what you're doing, and they're just getting, drug after drug after drug and just being pushed around purely, but I suppose because they don't know what's the matter.
It makes me cross to think about all of the medication that I have taken. At one point, I was taking up to 10 ibuprofen a day, and it was only taking the edge off the pain. And I was clock watching to see when I could take my next lot of tablets.
That must have been a mess of your digestive system.
Absolutely. I felt horrendous, and it was just a miserable time.
It must have been because having with your relationship as well,
course,
and I mean you're there stiff as a board, you can't move, or it just it must have been terrible.
When you're in your early 30s, you don't want somebody out stressing you.
Yeah.
You don't want somebody having to put you into bed or get you out of bed.
Yeah.
You don't. I wanted to. Everybody around me was completely supportive, and offered to do anything and everything for me. And I used to get so frustrated because I wanted to be able to do them for myself. And I'm not talking anything wild and extravagant, just mundane, everyday things that people take for granted. Things like my own laundry, being able to go shopping, being able to cook a meal, all of those things. Yeah. Wash and dress myself.
But couldn't do it. Wow.
It was a tough
But now
time.
you can, and whistle and dance. So you
I'm
dance around.
on top of the world.
That's amazing. That is amazing.
And if I stick to what I'm supposed to do, I feel absolutely fantastic.
Brilliant.
There's no hesitation about it.
That is incredible. I obviously haven't seen it before, but hearing the story, you've walked in here now, and if the listeners were to see you, they'd never think anything was ever wrong. It's amazing.
Yeah, and such a quick transformation as well. considering all the time I've spent at the hospitals.
It's above.
And everything that I've tried, I would have gone anywhere and I would have tried anything.
Yeah.
Because I couldn't accept that as my life.
Yeah.
And I just wasn't able to cope with that pain.
And he was there in your in tray for 6 months. So the moral of that story is, if something in your in tray, take it out. Put it in your out tray. That's brilliant. Lisa, that is great. Thank you so much for joining us today. And we're just going to bring Michael back in now and just to wrap up the show. But it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Brilliant. So here we are again, an amazing story from Lisa, absolutely incredible. Michael, you've done a sterling job. So look, where can people get hold of you?
Yeah, basically my clinic is in 28 Weymouth Street. It's just off Harley Street in London, and people can get on my website www.justimagine.ie. That's justimagine.ie or info@justimagine.ie, and all my office numbers are all there.
Fantastic. You got your DVD as well, which I'm going to copy off.
We've just had DVD out. It's called Just Imagine a Life Without Illness. That is something that people can buy on the website, and it would give people a great appreciation as to what it's about as well. My numbers, all of that, are on the website. So people get on Just Imagine website. A lot of information on there. Lots of see a lot about our history and the media stuff that we've done as well. Look at different documentaries that have been done in our system as well.
Brilliant. So one last question. Tell me something not many people know about you.
Not many people know about me is that I'm a very nice person. I don't know. I think a lot of people probably, what do they not know about me? I suppose the fact most people don't know the fact that I worked in the prison service. Everybody thinks that when you're involved in this business that what kind of a life did you have, and not a lot of people realise that. Well, first I was in the Department of Defence, which was in the airport, but the prison service. And everybody said, God, how did you end up going from the prison service to doing this work? And I suppose if it's in your path, it's in your path.
Absolutely.
That's the way I feel about it.
Well, it's been a joy and a pleasure. Thank you so much for spending time with us. So this is me, Simon Jordan, signing off. And don't forget, you can subscribe to these. And I'd love to hear your comments as well. Whether you believe this or you've had experiences of this. Love to have your comments. I'll pass them on to Michael. This is new, I'm going to call it new age or a new horizon. This is new stuff. It's been around Michael's been doing it for 24, 25 years, but
a new way of looking at things.
A new way of looking at things. We are all energy, everything. We just vibrate at different levels. There you go. That's my bit of insight. But it's fantastic. Thank you very much for being here.
Guys, my pleasure. Anytime.
Brilliant.
Anytime.
Until next time, enjoy and share these interviews as well, and don't forget to subscribe. And this is me, Simon Jordan, from the Simon Jordan Radio Show, and also the presenter of SimonJordan.tv. Signing off and saying thank you very much for listening. Bye.
You've been listening to the Simon Jordan Radio Show, sharing knowledge, motivation, and inspiration for today's business world.